Good morning and welcome to day 4 of Mr. Allen's Cornwall Adventures. Today I'm going to hike the St Michael's Way, which is a pilgrimage in Cornwall. It takes me from the north coast of Cornwall all the way to the south coast to a place called St Michael's Mount. That's a really special place for pilgrims, and it has the most beautiful fairy tale castle. I think you'll like it when I get there. I'll show you. Now behind me here is an old stone cross. Cornwall is full of these old stone crosses as Christian symbols. Back when the Romans left Britain, a lot of the Britons referred back to or regressed back to their own pagan ways, which meant they worshipped many gods. However, lots of Britons retained the Christian faith, which the Romans brought over with them. And monks were sent out to places like Cornwall, Wales and Scotland from places like Ireland and Iona, and from Rome, where the Christian faith had its head of church, the Pope. Now these monks and early Christian leaders came to places like this in Cornwall, and they were tasked with setting up settlements of Christians and leading that settlement, which is why in Cornwall you've got many places named after these monks or people, like here, St Uni or St Ives, St Senan. All these people came over and set up settlements, and the kings of Cornwall gave them land where they could grow the Christian community and settle, and that's how you get the place names. So these ancient stone crosses here, and you have some, used to have inscriptions on, but you can see it's still got the cross at the top there, were set up, and some of these are like 1,000 years old. And this pilgrimage I'm on today, people have been walking this pilgrimage for 1,000 years. Here's what used to happen. These monks used to get off the boat at St Ives or Lelant, just over yonder where I've just started from, and they had to walk from here to the south coast because that was safer than the ships sailing around Land's End, where the seas are quite treacherous and they risk shipwrecks. So they would then get another boat from the south coast, Penzance and St Michael's Mount, and then go off onto Europe. And this trail actually ends all the way in a place called Santiago in Spain. That's a long way from here, isn't it? So here I'm going to say a little prayer, and then I'm going to set off. This is called a living churchyard. That's an old chapel, and if you see, it's been left to be overgrown to provide habitats for the wildlife. Some of these graves are quite ancient now, and there's probably nobody around to look after them. And you can hear the church bells while I was speaking as well. That's quite apt for today, isn't it? And off I go. And ahead of me here is a place called Hale on the north coast of Cornwall. This is kind of the starting point, and then I'll be off turning south shortly. Here's a sign to show that I'm on the right track. The scallop here, which is an ancient Christian symbol for pilgrims, all over. You'll find these all over the place, showing the way for pilgrims to travel. And there's St Ives in the distance. Beautiful town. I'm going there tomorrow. This is called Porth Kidney Sands. Supposedly, it's in the shape of a kidney, believe it or not. For some, a pilgrimage is a journey to or between sacred places in different religions. Like for Islam, Mecca is a sacred place, and people go on Hajj there once in a lifetime if they can. For Christians, maybe Jerusalem, but for many Christians, Jerusalem is not realistic, so there are other places you can visit. Ancient times it was old cathedrals. The monks used to house and have hospitality for pilgrims as they walked from sacred place to sacred place. And this is no different. St Michael's Way is a sacred pilgrimage to the sacred site of St Michael's Mount, which held a priory there. A priory is a bit like an abbey. Oh, just look at this wonderful view. Just let me turn you around. How gorgeous. Right, back to what I was saying. Pilgrimages, that's right. Yes, pilgrimages don't have to be an outward journey. It's more about the inner journey as well. Like today I'm making an outward journey, I'm travelling along this path, but I'm also journeying within myself, thinking about my faith, thinking about my life, where I see myself, where do I fit into this world, and if I'm on the right path. So a pilgrimage, yes, you are travelling to a place, but it's a much more deeper spiritual thing as well. It's a journey of the spirit, or soul, if you will. And also, to think you're walking the same path as thousands of people have done over the course of 1,000 years. It's a remarkable thing, all with the same aspirations, intent, in order to know themselves, the world, and the faith, and to know God better. Coming up on the famous Carby Bay Resort. Not too many years ago, they had the G7 summit here, and President Biden and Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister at the time, and many other world leaders descended on this hotel and this place. And there we have Carby Bay. A lovely stretch of sand, very popular. It will be popular later when the sun comes out. And it is going to come out today. And there, just to prove I wasn't lying, here's the G7 sign at the hotel. The views inspire your thinking when you're on a pilgrimage like this. And here's where I turn south. I finished following the north coast now. I'm going to head inland to the south coast. What's fueling my pilgrimage today? Well, licorice all sorts, of course. The other day when I was walking, although it was hot, there was a breeze. But today, there's no breeze and it's very humid, which is the amount of moisture that's in the air, which makes sweat, perspiration and sweat really hard to evaporate from you. As you can see, not pleasant. Behind me you can see Nil's monument. It was built to honour one of St Ives' mayors in the late 1700s. I don't really know much about it, apart from that he was St Ives' mayor and also the customs collector, which means he collected taxes. A tax collector. Well, we all do have to pay our taxes. I don't know any more about this man who lived a long time ago. But learning is all about that, isn't it? Asking questions and finding out the answers for yourselves. That's a learning journey. That's how it works. So when I get back, I will do a bit of research and maybe I'll add on to the end of this video to tell you about the man himself. Okay, on to the next bit. So my next stop on this pilgrimage is Trencombe Hill, which is in 2 miles. That's an ancient Iron Age hill fort. Even before the Romans invaded Britain, this was an important fort and provided protection for the Celtic tribes of Britain. Going back to learning about things, it's important to remember that it's okay not to know everything. In fact, if you knew everything, nothing would be any fun anymore. You just got to find things that you don't know, ask the right questions and go looking for an answer. That's how we grow, that's how we learn. As old and as wise as I like to think I am, that's what I do. And I love learning new things every day. Stay curious, ask the right questions, keep on learning. Life is a long journey of learning. You never stop. Travelling to St Michael's on an old country lane, to hear of men's troubles, to hear of men's pains. With the wind in the willows and the birds in the sky, there's a bright sun to warm us wherever we lie. We have bread and fishes. I have licorice all sorts and a bottle of water to share on my journey, but there's nobody around. All these beautiful wildflowers. Well, some of them will be weeds, but still beautiful nonetheless. While I'm walking, I'll talk a little bit more about the history of Cornwall. Now, the Romans didn't penetrate too much into Cornwall. They did have little outposts here and there, but it was left really to the ancient Britons, Cornwall, which makes it unique in the country really, because it's kind of unspoilt. Even the Anglo-Saxons didn't penetrate far into Cornwall. They stopped at Devon. But what has been important to people all over Europe and beyond Europe really is the fact that Cornwall is a place for tin. There's been tin mines here for thousands of years, and it was a commodity that people needed because tin was needed to make bronze. So places like Tintagel, an ancient Bronze Age fort where they thought King Arthur might be born, and the south coast like St Michael's Mount and Penzance would have been important trading posts for ships coming in from around the Mediterranean and other parts of the world to trade goods for tin. And even though this road is now tarmacked, a lot of the routes and trackways and roads in Cornwall still follow those ancient trackways and routes that have been there for 1,000 years or more. Here's where I start to climb up to Trencombe Hill. Over these steps. Look at this ancient stone wall. Cornwall positively vibrates with history. When you're walking these ancient ways, you can actually feel it vibrating through your body. There's something deeply spiritual about that. Now, something I've not really come across much is mud, but look at this. Oh my goodness. Well, here goes. Safely through the mud. And look, here we have some blackberries. I don't mind if I do. Watch the prickles. Give it a blow. Now, never eat anything outside unless you're sure what it is. I'm 100% sure this is a blackberry, so I'm going to eat it. Sweet, nice. Not sticking around here. A bit of a scary abandoned farm I've just gone through. That's Trencombe Hill in the distance, the site of an Iron Age fort. Oops, looks like I made a friend. Even though it's waymarked, some of them are a little bit obscure, and you have to really be careful you don't miss your turning. Always important for you to have a map as well. As you can see, I have to take a bit of a diversion because the cows are covering the stile. I have to come over where those trees are and climb over this gate. Not part of the country code, but the safer or the less. And look, despite signs saying pick up your dog poo, look what I've just stood in. If you own a dog, please be responsible and pick up the mess. It's just not on. So here I am at the top of Trencombe Hill. I'm going to climb some rocks and see if I can show you the views. Well, here we are on the top of Trencombe Hill, site of an ancient Iron Age hill fort. And if you look around, that's the south coast, and way in the distance there, that is St Michael's Mount. I told you it was a fairy tale castle. Look at that, that's where I'm heading. Can't wait to get there. And coming back round, there's the north coast. That's at Porth Kidney Sands again. That's where I set off from this morning. Okay, well, let me climb up this rock to see if I can get a better view for you. There we go. That's where I'm heading. Over there is Penzance. That's Marizion and St Michael's Mount. Just another panoramic view of what we can see all around. You can see why the ancient Britons chose this place for the hill fort. You can see miles around for any potential invaders or people coming to steal your livestock or your goods, or even to kill and take your land. So this site was occupied even before the Romans came here. And there's a legend of Trencombe Hill. They say that giants used to live here, and when they were enraged used to throw giant rocks. As you can see some behind me over there, ready to be thrown at the people down below. A legend or true? You decide. So that was an interesting and awesome place. I'll tell you a bit about the Celts, okay? Before the Romans came, Britain was inhabited by the Celtic people, and they lived in tribes which were dotted around all over the place, and a lot of them lived in these hill forts like the one we've just seen up there. Obviously not much there now, and it's all overgrown, so whatever is there to see is covered in the gorse and the ferns. But yeah, interesting people, the Celts. Didn't so much like the Romans coming. A famous Celtic warrior you may have heard of is Boudicca, who kind of made a rebellion against the Romans and did very well. However, in the end, the Romans proved a little bit too much for Boudicca and the Celts. As the Romans were organised and had military tactics, the Celts weren't as organised, and their tactics weren't as brutal as and organised as the Romans, so eventually the rebellion was crushed, and Boudicca, we presume, was killed in that final battle. And again, not all Celts were averse to the Romans coming, because the Romans did bring lots of advantages as well, like laws and sewage systems and roads and organised armies for protection. Also brought with them lots of goods from across the empire. So the benefits of being an empire is that things that weren't available in your land, such as Britain, became commonplace, and they brought new techniques in building and new technologies that the ancient Britons didn't have. So the Romans did a lot for us, really, even though they weren't always well received at the time, as nobody likes invaders anyway, do they? Here's another shot of Trencombe Hill, left behind, a good 15 minutes ago. And now I'm in some lovely fields. When you're walking through farmers' fields, you need to be wary, because a lot of the farmers' fields these days are electrified, and you don't want to be touching the electric fence. Believe me, I've done it. Lots of cows here, and lots of cow pats. Again, giving them a wide berth, being wary. Lots of grassy fields now. And you can see we're getting closer. Where is it? There it is. Looks like I'm going to head in some ancient woodland next. When routes aren't used often, everything gets a bit overgrown. It becomes really difficult to pass. Such a shame. Beautiful routes, people should use it more. There's been a few places where it's been a bit overgrown like that. My legs feel like they're on fire with bramble scratches and thistles and stinging nettles. But all part of the process and all part of the journey. I'm happy. This is called a ford. It's where a safe passage has been made across a river or a stream. So here, cars will come down here and across the river here. You see it in place names like Bradford. That was an old ford. A place name that's got ford in was a crossing place on a river. Handy bridge for me to use. When out walking on these quiet country roads, it's important to look out for traffic. Walk on the right if you can to face the oncoming traffic. And always give way to the cars. Stand at the side if one wants to pass. It's easy to underestimate the amount of water that you'll drink on a walk like this, especially on a day when it's quite warm and humid and you sweat a lot. I've already gone through 1 litre of water and I'm on to my second. It's a good job there's not too far to go now. And yes, friends, I like Lelant cookies too. Over a stream, into the woods. Now we're in a little village called Lugdven. Here is the church. Moving on. Well, 4 miles to go. What an incredible view. I've just tripped and put my hand in a load of stinging nettles. It feels a little bit tingly. That's another thing the Romans did for us. They brought over stinging nettles. And you know what the crazy fools did? When they were cold, they used to bash themselves with the stinging nettles in order to keep warm. Okay, Romans, you can keep your stinging nettles. This hurts. On the road down into Cornwall. Well, here I am in Cornwall. It's a lovely little village. This village has an interesting legend attached to it. I know I've got loads of legends. Anyway, around 2,000 years ago, there was a boy who came to Cornwall and stayed here. He was brought by a man on a merchant ship from the Mediterranean. That boy turns out to be Jesus, and the man, Joseph of Arimathea. Now, it's reported that they came to trade goods and tin. Joseph of Arimathea was a merchant, a person who traded goods. Now, is there any historical truth to this legend? Unlikely, as it's not mentioned in any of the historical or religious texts that Jesus came to Britain. However, there is a small possibility, as traders did come from the Mediterranean here to trade in tin and other goods, that the legend could be true. Sometimes I like to believe in possible things. So although unlikely that Jesus did come here, it's an interesting story, and I do like to believe things impossible do happen. So maybe he did come here, and maybe he did go to places like Glastonbury, which is another place where he's reported to have been in Britain. Who knows? But to think he could have been here is quite another spiritual experience. Right, leaving Cornwall around behind me now, and I'm going to head down towards the sea and then walk along the coast to St Michael's Mount. On the last stretch now, and here we go. Around 1.25 miles to go to St Michael's Mount, which is there. This stretch of coast path is called Long Rock. Maybe because it's one big long rock. Not sure why. Okay, I'm just going to walk to St Michael's Mount now, and I'll check in with you there. So here I am, I've made it almost 15 miles from Lelant near St Ives to Mounts Bay and St Michael's Mount. It's been an epic trip. I've learnt a lot about myself, as people do on pilgrimages. I'm a little battered and bruised, but happy and contented, and it was an awesome trip, and I've learnt a lot about the countryside, Cornwall, myself, and my faith, and I prayed a bit along the way as well. Now, to access the island, St Michael's Mount, you need to go across this secret causeway here. This ancient causeway is covered by the tide when the tide is in, and the mount is cut off by the sea. But fortunately today the tide is out and I'm able to walk across. And there you go, it really is a fairy tale castle, full of tales of giants and mermaids and angels and the fight of good and evil. Like the pilgrims of yesteryear, the mountain and St Michael's Mount still draws masses and masses of people here when they're on holiday as tourists. So it's still a draw for people even today. And like the pilgrims of yesteryear, I'm going to complete the final bit barefoot. And here we go. Traditionally walked barefoot this causeway. And when the tide's in, this causeway is covered by water. And the only way to get to the island is then by boat. And that's it. I've arrived at the end of the St Michael's Way pilgrimage. I'm going to sign off here at St Michael's Mount. It's been an epic journey. I'm going to make my way back to St Earth in the car now, back to the campsite. I'll see you all later. Started my journey here at Lelant, and I followed this blue line here where it says St Michael's Way, all the way across here to Carbis Bay. Then I took the turning here and followed it to Nils Monument, all the way down St Michael's Way, around here and going to Lugdven and then across here to Gulville, where I told you about the story about possibly Jesus and Joseph of Arimathea going, and then down onto Long Rock and across here to St Michael's Mount. That's my journey today. Around about 15 miles it was. Thank you for joining me on my deeply spiritual pilgrimage today. It certainly was a life-affirming experience. I counted all my blessings with every step. Family, my faith, my job, who I am as a person. Truly blessed to be where I am and doing what I do. Reflecting on what I'm good at and what my weaknesses are and what I need to work on, what I'm going to leave, what heavy weight I'm going to leave behind, and what light I'm going to take forward into the future. All those thoughts came to me today as I walked those ancient steps. And now, what better way to finish such a wonderful, life-affirming day than to sit here on the cliffs of Watergate Bay watching the sunset. Now, some moments are not for sharing. They exist out of time and space. Moments to freeze and hold back time and just be in that moment. So I'm going to leave you here. I'm going to sit here and watch the sunset because it needs to be experienced with your own eyes. Here, right now, in this moment. So I'll see you tomorrow. Have a lovely evening and see what I get up to tomorrow. Here's a little glimpse of the sunset, but I'm going to watch all of it.